What's up, YouTube? It's Leo again, Boom to 1987. I'm going to be playing The Last of Us Part 1, the PC port, in 4K Ultra for a second. This is on a 5950X RX 6800, 64 gigs of 3600 CL18 RAM. And I believe I have this saved on an NVMe. Both the C drive as well as where I have this game saved and everything else are on NVMe's Gen 3 NVMe's. As you can see, I'm getting about 30 FPS and it's running as high as 175 watts. For reference, other games can pull about 215, 220 watts max. So there's a bit of a bottleneck somewhere here, and it's not quite as apparent here because it is running close to 200, so I still consider that pretty good utilization. But you'll see as I drop resolutions, that gets worse.
Daddy, I'm scared.
And I did get a few stutters going through here as animations were occurring a minute ago. But let's see if it still happens or not. Looks like not as much this time because all of this stuff is in the shader pre-cache now.
Keep looking at me, baby.
Looks pretty good at 4K Ultra, of course.
Over there. We're gonna get out of this.
No real horrible stutters, unless it's something you see for the first time, which is what happened the first time I ran through here. That it was like showing some stuff that I hadn't yet seen, and so although it does like a shader compilation before the game starts, which by the way took like over an hour on my 5950X. Although it doesn't use all the threads when it does that, I noticed it was only like 33% utilization most of the time, even though those cores were pegged at 100%.
We're almost there, baby.
It means that if you have even a 5600X, it's likely to load in the same amount of time. And if you have something with a greater single core speed like a 7600 or 7700 or a 13th gen 13400 or 600, you'll probably get even better compilation times. But anyway, if it sees something for the first time, it's still gonna stutter. But as you can see, most of the stuff is like around 30, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, and pulling anywhere from like 140 to 185 watts or so. And I'll show low settings here in a minute. But what I wanted to show again was running through it in 1080 and then FSR all the way down to 1080, which you'll see like you can only drop the settings and resolution so low before you hit like this minimum. So I'll just load back into the beginning. And in case you hear some gameplay in the background, my son's playing Among Us. So as soon as it goes back in, I'll show you what low settings looks like for performance as well as what it looks like for the visuals. Obviously, it doesn't look as good as Ultra, but there's some settings here that actually cost quite a lot more than others, and some that like between low and Ultra or low and high, like you can get pretty much near Ultra looks without much of a performance impact, and I'll go through that here at the end. But I just wanted to show like the 1080p comparisons here in a minute. But before I do that, I'm going to show just how every setting shows you what it looks like visually and sort of what the performance impact will be.
What is it?
My leg hurts.
How bad?
Pretty bad.
We're gonna need to run.
Alright, so I will put it on low settings, but you'll see, look, 31 FPS, 186 watts or so. I can set this thing all the way to low. No longer 31 FPS. 53 FPS, 172 watts. And you can see for any individual setting, like draw distance, for example, you can flip through them and see just how different they look in in like a specific pre-rendered scene that they have to show you. So you see between low and high is not that big of a difference, and you see, or low and ultra. And at low, I'm running 53 FPS. At ultra, let's see what I would be running. 53 FPS. So there you go. There are quite a few settings that are like this and some that are not. And I'll go through it at the end to show, I guess, the best bang for buck settings at the end. But before I do that, I want to show the ultra 1080p native. So here's Ultra, and then I will go to display and change to render scale. I guess I don't have to change render scale. I can just change display resolution. I'll change render scale, I guess, because why change your screen's resolution, right? So I'll change this to 1080, and we'll see what the performance looks like, and then I'll do it again, but with FSR running down to 1080 instead, to see which one looks better and which one is more performant. Is it better to use resolution scaling or FSR?
Keep us safe. You're cool, now hold on tight.
I would say the game does a good job of anti-aliasing, because even though this is in 1080 and I'm running it on a 65-inch 4K TV, like, it doesn't look terrible. And now I'm finally getting in the 60s, in the 70s. There's obviously not quite as much detail to everything if you look up close, especially hair, because hair's so thin.
Keep looking at me, baby.
But the performance is quite a bit better. But you see, it's running only about 130 watts or so. Even though it's really freed up a lot of the GPU headroom. Like, it could pull another 70 watts if it were capable of it. But it just doesn't because of a bottleneck elsewhere. By the way, the reflections in this game look really good. The like mirror reflections and stuff, which are probably planar reflections. There you saw 116 watts. Now we're in the 80s over here, 90 FPS.
He's dead. God damn it.
So even using render scaling, it looks pretty good. It doesn't look like horribly aliased or anything.
Keep going. Find a way out of
Just, you know, some loss of detail, especially in textures and in the hair. There, I can see it on the shadow a little bit. Alright. But I'll load back in, and then I'll use FSR to do it instead. Emergency meeting? Emergency meeting? Okay. Alright. So now I'll go back up to 4K. Alright. I'll tell you, when the VRAM goes all the way out, like, honestly, even at 140, I think it did it. At 120, it doesn't do it, but if I go anything higher than that in 4K, it really, really, like, goes down to, like, not even 1 FPS. Like, if I count per second, it doesn't give me a new frame every second. Once I max out the VRAM, or I go over the VRAM limit, it really, like, every 5-10 seconds, it gives me a new frame, and it responds really, really poorly. But let's use FSR2, and we're going to go down to 1080 to see just what it looks like. So we already saw that was 75, and this is 54 FPS. So again, I can go back to no FSR and render scale 50, and you'll see in the top right hand, I get about 75 FPS. Pulls about 150 watts. If I go back up to 100 and use FSR to, or I guess render scale, it doesn't matter when I do that. But I set it to FSR 2 in performance, so it's actually rendering 1080p and then upscaling to 4K. You'll see it's going to drop from 75 FPS and 150 watts to 54 FPS and 167 watts. So it's costing me an extra 10 or how many was it? I don't remember. 10 watts or so. I think it was at 150, so maybe even more than that. And it's costing me 20 FPS or 21 FPS. But I'll run through it again and you tell me if it looks better or not. Upscaled from 1080 to 4K. It looks a little fizzly around when you've got like bloom and stuff near opaque and dark textures. I did notice that. This actually looks pretty good.
I'm here, baby.
Or like right there, as the light is like going around Joel. Doesn't look great to me.
What is it?
My leg hurts.
How bad?
Pretty bad.
We're gonna need to run. God. Keep us safe.
And the hair also still looks really fuzzy.
Hold on tight.
The wall textures and floor textures and stuff do look really good though.
Daddy, I'm scared.
And when things are semi-static like this, it looks good. Yeah, just not the hair and like some edges when there's too much contrast. Now we're running into the 60s here. Still in the 60s. Now in the 50s.
Keep looking at me, baby.
So it's a pretty big performance loss compared to running native. And it costs a little bit more power as well.
We're gonna get out of this.
Although, like I said, there's still a bottleneck because it still can't pull 200 watts. And a bit of that is the CPU, and I'll show it in Task Manager here in a minute. Even though our CPU isn't at 100%, you can't really reach that if it runs out of cache, or if the RAM is running too slowly, or if any single thread realistically is like maxed out, which is the case here. We were hitting like 90 at the max. We were hitting the 70s there when using FSR from 1080 to 4K.
We're almost there. We're almost
So
there.
I would almost say it's better to run the render scale than to run FSR here. And I know a bit of this is probably due to the FSR sharpening setting. Like if we ran instead of that, we were to use really low. So I can try it now, I guess. Sharpening all the way down to 0, for example. Doesn't change performance much, but it probably looks a little bit smoother around the edges and stuff.
Go! You got Sarah!
It does.
I cannot run him! I will meet you there. Hurry!
So some of that fizzling and stuff is probably due to the over sharpening.
It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, it looks pretty good here actually.
Almost there.
But it still costs quite a bit of performance, but like, yeah, there's too much shimmering and stuff. That's just as well. Okay. Now, I'll go through the settings. I'll go back to what I actually was using for this card. That keeps it like at a 60 minimum and runs upwards of like around in the 70s for the most part. And sometimes as high as 80 depending on which area you're in and stuff. What is this? Just an email. But I had set it to 1800. And then I was using FSR to come up from 1200. And so here I am at 65. If I went back to the 1080 up to 4K, so I'm doing 65 here, and otherwise I would be doing 58. And I think this looks a little bit better, honestly. You're not upscaling all the way to 4K, you're upscaling up to 1800, but you're upscaling from a better render resolution, 1200 instead of 1080, and I think it looks better. I guess I might as well show it real quick. I'll load back into the same scene, but I'll go through the settings that I think are worthwhile. And you can tell me whether you agree or not, but yeah, I've got a bit of a problem with the performance in this game. First of all, the fact that it took like an hour to compile the shaders before I got to play. That was of course annoying, but even apart from that, the fact that it can't pull 200 watts and the fact that some of the threads are actually maxed out in this game is kind of crazy to me. Even on low settings, you know. And like I said, I could run the game at 240p, like upscaled up to 720 with like low settings, and it still can't pass 85 FPS,
My leg hurts.
How bad?
which is pretty bad,
Bad.
in my
We need to
opinion.
run. God. Keep us safe. Come on, baby. Now hold on tight.
see here. Yeah, because you can set this display resolution to 720, and then you can use FSR Ultra Performance, and you're rendering from like 240 to 720. And like I said, even then I don't get 90 FPS, which is crazy. But I can show you real quick Task Manager, and you'll see when I look at Resource Monitor what's going on with the CPU. So as it starts to load more and more of this, you'll see like some of these threads are pretty close to 100% while this thing is running. Like, look there. I mean, some of them are pretty idle, but like CPU 1 and 2 are sharing the same core. They're just two threads of the same core. And then same thing here. So if you have either one of them, the previous odd or the following even, overutilized, that means that core is pretty much maxed out. So like here 5 and 6, even though 5 is not heavily used, 6 is. Even though 7 isn't, 8 is. Same thing with 9 and 10. But you'll see that some of these are not quite so much. You could see quite a lot of them are actually pretty close to high utilization. On average, or in total, the aggregate value being about 40 to 45%. And then as you're running around, animations are going on and stuff, maybe as much as like 50 or 60% at times, but for the most part around 40 on this CPU. 17 and 18 is pretty used. 20 is not. Like you can see 21 and 20 not so much. 21 and 22 not so much. So there's like 1 core, 2 cores. That one's pretty used. 3 cores. Yeah, I mean, I guess it was the prior even and the following odd, because it's like 0 and 1 and then 30 and 31. But you can see that there are a few cores that are not exactly used all the way. 30 and 31. 24 and 25. 22 and 23. That's about it. But there are a few cores that are not totally maxed out and some that are pretty close. And then, like I said, on average or aggregately, it's about 45% on a 5950X. But I think that considers like the base clock of 3.8 to be like the max, even though realistically the CPU runs up to like 4.6, 4.7. So it's not really max. But anyway. The settings. So to go back into graphic settings, and you can see, like I said, you can see what every single one of them does graphically. For example, I'll go back to Ultra or draw distance. You can see low, what that looks like. And then here, I would say like between low and medium, you can see quite a few things change there on that building. And then from medium to high, not so much, but that image is pretty small. And then at Ultra, you see a little bit of the fence changing over there. But it's not a huge difference. But even still, if I do low, actually I'll do low for everything, and then that way I can compare the Ultras. So at low, animation setting, of course, causes no impact realistically to the GPU. But if I look at draw distance, I'm at 70, between 72 and 74. I wish it were a little more stable. Maybe I should get somewhere a little more stable before I do this. Yeah, I'll do that. How's that? That's pretty good. I'd call that 77. I mean, it's bouncing between 76 and as high as even 80, but 77 seems to be where it sits for the longest amount of time, so it would be the mode in this case. Anyway, draw distance low, about 77. Draw distance ultra, 77. So I'd leave that at ultra. dynamic objects level of detail, you'll see here what they look like, the differences between them. If you look at the Humvee, of course, like a lot of it is changing from like being a really, really plain texture to being quite a bit more detailed than that. The geometry as well as the textures are greatly improved from low to medium. From medium to high, you see a bit more detail like around the edges and then some of the grill and stuff. And then from high to ultra, almost nothing. But let's see. It's currently at low, and we said it sits about 77, because it's like between 78 and, or 75 and 80, but sits at 77 for a while. Let's see what this does. As low as 74, as high as 79. Sits at 76, 77. Not a big difference. We can try high since that looks basically the same. That kind of sits at 77, maybe a little bit more now. I don't see 74 anymore. I do see 79 quite a bit. 80 even. So this is back to like from low to high, about the same performance. And it looks substantially better at high, like you see there. And then ultra, like I said, doesn't look like a big difference. At least you can't see it in this image they're providing us with. So I'd say high is fine. Ultra doesn't seem to make a big difference, but we'll leave it at high for now. Characters level of detail, you can see Tommy there. Low, medium, high. For whatever reason, it's not pre-rendering ultra for us. Oh, it's breaking. All right, we'll set it back to low. I'll apply this. I'll apply ultra and then go back in. Okay. So there, it's breaking it again. I'll apply high, get out, go back in, and not flip through them so quickly. Hopefully it doesn't break. See if we can get it to not break. High, medium. It seems like when I set it to ultra, medium doesn't want to show up. And when I set it to between high and ultra, you can see a little bit of texture in the hair, a little bit of detail in the hair, a difference. In any case, I'll set it to low, which is what we had it at, about 77, as high as 80, which is what we were seeing earlier. I'll set ultra. Now it's closer to like 75-ish. And it does move up to 78. So we've dropped by like 2 FPS generally everywhere. What about high? High looks pretty similar. 77, 76, 75, 79. So we've gained back about half of that difference from like low to ultra using high. Here's low, here's medium, here's high, and there's ultra. A little bit of difference in the hair. If you see the hair is fizzling too much and you want to fix that, well, first of all, if you're using a low resolution or you're using FSR, it's going to do it anyway. So you might as well use high instead of ultra. Environment level of detail. I'm going to set it to ultra, go out and come back in. Hopefully it's fixed. No? Sort of. There's low. Here's medium. High's broken. Okay. Low. Medium. What a pain. Alright, so we can't see ultra at the moment. Oh, come on. Why doesn't it just fix it for me? Because it does make a pretty substantial difference, and these other ones are not showing up either. What if I go back into the menu? Alright, there's ultra. Here's high. Here's medium. Low, come on. Why'd you do this to me? There's low. There's medium. There's high. Oh, there's ultra. So now we can see them all again. So low is what I currently have applied. And you can see from low to medium some of the larger objects, bigger grass clumps and bushes, and like that far tree that's taking up quite a bit of screen space. their detail raises a little bit. When you go from medium to high, those same things change, but now even some other clumps of grass, like the one closer to the left side of Joel's backpack, is also changing. And then some, like the car's license plate and doors and stuff are gaining a little bit more detail. And then from high to ultra, you see it just brings up anything else that it's ignored up till then. Like there's a window on that far building. All of the foliage has a little bit more detail to it. And let's see the difference between low and ultra. So right now we're 73, 75, 74. As low as 71, but like 73, 74, 75 is kind of where it's bouncing. I wish I could get something a little bit more stable. So that's the only change so far. But let's see. I just gotta pause it at like exactly the right time for that to happen. For it to be stable. $77-ish again, or 78-ish. Let's see if it drops by a lot or not. At ultra, no. I mean, we don't have a ton of foliage here, which may be why, but this is environment level of detail. This doesn't just apply to foliage, it just applies to the vehicles, to the buildings, it applies to everything. We're seeing 76, 78 bouncing around. We saw as high as 79 that time. Maybe that's significant. Maybe not. 1 FPS, whatever. I'll put it to ultra. Actually, I'll put it to high and see if we see that 79 again. No, I'm not seeing it. So I might as well go to ultra there. Dynamic object textures. Ooh, I had accidentally set that to ultra at some point. Okay, I hope this one doesn't break. It did break. Okay. Okay, they loaded all of them. Good. So this is what low looks like. Medium, high. There, obviously, you can see all the grip texture on the gun, as well as some of the like decal and stuff of like the wear on the metal of the cartridge. And then on like what looks like a leather pouch sitting higher up above that, like it looks totally smooth at low, and then it looks a little more weathered as you go higher up. But the biggest is like the texture of the gun looks quite a bit better. I would say like high and ultra look pretty much the same, at least for this image, and that may not be the case everywhere. But let's try out from low, where we're stable around 60, bouncing between 74 and 78. I guess 76 and 78 is more like. Yeah, I mean, I see 76 pretty often. It's kind of what it reverts back to. So we'll see, 76. Ooh, as low as 70 there. As high as 78 again, back to stabilizing at 76, 75. Maybe we lost a frame there, maybe we didn't. Let's see if 5 is any better. I mean high. Yeah, I mean they're kind of the same. Let's go to characters, texture quality. And I'm telling you right now, like I know these are not making that big of a difference, so it seems like this is all kind of a waste of time. But you'll see that some are not that way. Some really do cost a lot of performance. And you see there's a big difference between low and medium here. Medium and high, a little extra detail, and then like high to ultra, almost nothing. You can see the straps a little bit changing on the straps. The texture of the straps looks a bit more detailed at ultra. But let's see the difference between low and ultra. 75, 76, 78, 75. Well, it already was at ultra. Let's put it to low. 75. 75, 73, 72. seeing basically the same thing. Back to low. 73, 75, 72, 73. And then at ultra, 75, 72, 73, 71, 74, 71, 72. So we saw 71 there a little bit more at ultra. Let's try high. I mean, it seems like high and low are basically the same setting. I'm not seeing 71 there. I even see 76 and 77 for a second. Yeah, it's like, it's fluctuating a little bit too much. The fluctuation in the variances of the game, even during the static image, is more than what this particular setting costs anyway. I'm going to go ultra on it. Environments, texture, quality. So let's flip through them. That's what low looks like. Medium, high, ultra. High and ultra, there's like a very slight amount above the hotel sign. And it looks like, I don't know, that little building just past the hotel, beyond the gate, that changes a tiny bit. Not a whole lot, but between low and medium, there's a pretty substantial difference. Environment, texture, quality. And these textures, like, we're not close enough to maybe really see them too much. You can see, like, through the webbing on the right side fence, and then, like, the left-hand side where it says Bostonian, right? Like, high and ultra, there's not a big difference there, but high and medium, you see quite a bit of texture difference on far stuff and the webbing on the right-hand side fence. And then, like, between low and medium is quite a lot, actually. Like, the Bostonian text is pretty much all washed out, and then the webbing on the right-hand side, or the fencing, looks pretty bad at low. So we'll see what ultra costs. Before we do that, 74, 75, 76, 77, 74. All right, let's see it. 73, 76, 72, 73, 75, 74, 72. So we were dropping down to 72 now occasionally. Actually, it's doing that fluctuation thing again. There's 77 once again at low. We're hitting a high of 75 though at ultra setting. Let's see if high will get us up to the 77. No, it seems like high and ultra cost about the same thing. Oh, actually I saw 78 there for a second. So maybe so. We saw 77 for a sec. I don't think we're going to see that at ultra. We see 76, but not 77. But still, oh, there's 77. So pretty much no difference. Here's low, medium, high, and ultra for the visual effects texture quality. So this is like the fire and stuff. The problem is you can't really see how the smoke and the fire really look in this image. If they could give you like a full size of that image, it would be better. But we can see the difference between low and high. Once again, we're 74, 77 roughly. We're still seeing 77 at ultra. Okay. Anisotropic filtering usually costs a little bit, but it looks so much better with anisotropic filtering times 16 than it does at like 1. And we're still seeing 76. I'll show you what low looks like. This is like as surfaces become parallel to your viewpoint. So as you're like looking down the edge of a wall or the edge of a floor, which is pretty common, the textures themselves, when you don't have enough anisotropic filtering, look really destroyed. Like they have no detail to them. Meaning like they look absolutely smudged and like super low resolution. Even if when you look at them dead on, like you're looking straight at a wall perpendicular, it looks great, but with no filtering, as you look at it more and more parallel, that image is, the texture image is destroyed. So I would recommend 16 for this. Highest setting on filtering always, in every game, pretty much. Texture sampling quality. First, let's look at the visual differences. Not much. You can see on the left-hand side in the shade, right, just right by the tree between high and ultra, and then even between medium and high, a little bit of lighting difference, but I'm not sure if that's like because more leaves are showing up, more textures from the leaves are being accounted for in that directional lighting, maybe. But anyway, we know what the performance is like at low. Let's see it at high, or ultra rather. 75, 74. Go back to low. Oh, we saw 77 again. Let's go back to ultra and see if we can get that. I don't know. The highest I'm seeing here at ultra is 75. The highest I see without it is 77. Oh, I saw 76 for a second. So, again, not a great difference. Ambient occlusion quality. So this is off. And then we're going to go to... So this is what off looks like. Terrible. Quarter resolution looks okay. Half resolution looks a little bit better. Full resolution looks not that much better than full. So as you can see, like diminishing returns here, right? But we're seeing 75 on the high end, occasionally 76 at current settings. So 75, 72 roughly. 72 is still there. 71. So no longer going up to 75, it looks like. That's full resolution. Let's see half resolution. 73. 74. Let's see quarter. 73, 72. I'm sure we'll see 74. There it is. 74 again. So between off and... This one does have an appreciable performance difference. We can actually even go off. 74, 75. But like, look at the difference. Like, that's an immense difference right there. And then as you go higher, it just has not only a stronger effect, but a better resolution. So as you see, those shadows are not going to look as fuzzy or as noisy. I'm gonna go with full resolution just because I suspect there's gonna be some fuzziness to it. Here's directional shadow resolution, and to see the difference, low, medium, high, and ultra. This is directional shadow resolution, so like as the sun or the moon is like shining through the trees and stuff, through the leaves, it's bringing a little more resolution to the obstruction of that directional light and how those shadows are being cast. So like at low, it's pretty much just putting this blockiness over there, and then it's taking sort of the shape as well as like the distance from where the shadow is being laid, to make it look more like it would in real life, taking into account how far the object is from the ground where it's laying the shadow. So we're at low, or yeah, low at 72, sometimes 71, 71, 72, 71, 72. I mean, in this scene, we don't have a ton of it because it's the nighttime scene, so maybe this will make more of a difference in the daytime scenes. But let's look at directional shadow distance. So this is like how far away these shadows are being cast. So like here you can see at low, between low and medium, there's quite a big effect already happening on Joel and some of the closer foliage. And then at high, you can see that like that tree that's a little further away and some of the stuff on the right is having more shadowing going on due to the sun and other directional light. Between high and ultra, I don't know. You'd have to see like a full-size image of that to even see a difference. So 71, 72, maybe as low as 70 is what we're seeing right now. Let's do ultra. 71, 72. I mean, again, we don't have very much directional light here because we don't have the sun. Image-based lighting. toggles image-based lighting, which is used in surface lighting and static reflections. This looks quite a bit darker and moodier, but it doesn't look quite as accurate to me. If we use image-based lighting, let's see, we're like 71, 72, 70. 70, 71. Not 72 anymore. It'll probably go down to 69 even. What is going on with my phone right now? All right. Spotlight shadow resolution. So these are like spotlights, like internal lights, for example, the lamp and stuff. Or even the TV and stuff. Again, this is resolution of the shadows. So like shadows being cast as a result of obstruction of those light sources. So the lower you set this quality, like of course you see like an effect in brightness and shadowing, but it's a resolution thing. So they're going to look noisier and fuzzier on the low end. Again, we're like 71 on the high, 70 on the low as 69 now. And at ultra, we're seeing 70, 69, maybe 68 now. 68 there. Let's try high. 70, 69, 70. Let's see if we see 71 or 68 to see which end we're on. 71. So we're closer to the low setting there in terms of performance. Point light shadows resolution. Again, with the resolution, this is going to take into account a little bit more how far they are from the light source, how far they are from the surface where the shadow will be cast to. And at low, not a great effect. Although there is at least some feathering there. So it doesn't look super, super sharp, which is good. But it definitely does look better between even medium and ultra. There's not a big difference that I can see. So let's try ultra. 70 still, 71 still, so yeah, no difference. Bounce lighting. Bounce lighting makes a big difference visually. Like, look at that. You know, the flashlight is bouncing off that wall and lighting up the rest of the room. 70. So nearly no difference. Okay. Screen space shadows quality. Between off and low, there's a bit of a difference. Low and high, same thing. Almost none. But between high and ultra, there's a big difference there. Especially like in the water, you can see the rocks, right? We'll try ultra. Oof, we lost 3 whole FPS there. We can try high. I mean, I don't know. These are all pretty expensive. Like, you don't save a whole ton going from ultra down to high. And I'd say that's a pretty big visual difference. If you're going to bother with the setting at all, we can try off. 71. 69, 70. So I guess we can call it 70. And if we go all the way to ultra, we get 67. Yeah. And then high gives us 68, sometimes 60, I guess 69. So we are getting like 2 FPS back, going from ultra back down to high. But it makes a pretty big visual difference. I don't know how much you'd notice while you're playing, but it looks different, really different, at least in this image. So I'll go ultra. I'm still above 60, so I'm okay with that. Dynamic screen space shadows. Oh, look at that. Right, the shadowing from their hair, from the flashlight on Joel's shoulder strap. The shadow from like their nose or from their chins. Pretty big difference, I think. So we're at 67. Let's see what we drop to. Still 67. I mean, all of these are cumulative. Even if they're all only like 0.5% or half an FPS or like a quarter of an FPS at whatever frame rate we're currently at, they all add up to something, which is why we've gotten down from like the mid 70s down to the high 60s at this point. Contact shadow quality. So here's low or off. There's low. Big difference on the backpack especially. And then like you can see the car. The resolution on the car looks quite a bit better. Medium, high, low and medium. A little bit, especially in the hair. Still some more on the backpack. Medium and high, like the straps and stuff on the backpack. High and ultra. Similar thing. Let's see. We're at 67. 66, 67 again. Now that it's stabilized. About the same. So leave that one at ultra. Screen space ambient occlusion. This is a huge one. Look at the difference. Off. On. Off. On. Look at that. It's ridiculous. Like night and day difference. Like not using ambient occlusion in this game is a big no-no to me. And it's still 67. Dropping down, it dipped down to 66 there for a second. So it's definitely lower like now that we've done these couple of last ones. Denoise quality. If you notice your ambient occlusion is really noisy, you can turn this up, of course. We're 66, 67 now. Let's see what my phone's buzzing about. Oof. I just heard some very bad news about a review in this for this game. So we're at low. Low is ambient occlusion, denoise quality. Again, this is the noise. How much you can't really see it in this image much, but it's the amount of noise you're going to see in ambient occlusion shading. 66, 67, and we'll go to ultra or high. I guess is the highest we can go here. 66, 67. It's not any different, so we'll leave it. Screen space directional occlusion. So you'll see this like between the leaves and stuff. You see that? Because like there's directional light and stuff, and it's taking into account the direction of lighting and also like how near two meshes are to one another, and whether they're translucent or not. And so it's creating those shadows in between. Instead of just two things that are close to one another, which is ambient occlusion, this is directional occlusion, accounting for the direction in which the light is coming, from which the light is coming, and where those two objects are placed relative to one another. That one was still at high. Okay, on and off. I think on looks pretty good. It's not as big of a difference as ambient occlusion in general. Which one was it? That guy. Screen-based ambient occlusion. I think had a greater effect, but this has a similar effect. So now we're down to 66, 67. So still the same. Space cone tracing. Look around Joel, the backpack, and all of that. And look at that. Under his arms, under the handle of the backpack, you see quite a big difference there that it's like taking into account sort of more his geometry and stuff. Space cone tracing. So this is further refines screen space ambient occlusion with additional cone information for better defined light occlusion on high frequency details. So just like it sounds. Let's see if we're still 66, 67 or not. Yes. So leave it on. Screen space reflections. Of course, this is like, it's going to be using cube maps otherwise, which are just like generic images that it should reflect anytime you're looking at a reflective surface, unless you turn on screen space reflections. So there you can see it's like taking into account the things that are just beyond the water and trying to reflect them. So that gazebo and that diorama, or whatever you want to call it, the monument on the left-hand side or right-hand side of Joel, just by his head. Pretty big difference, I'd say. 66, 67 without it. Let's look with it. 66. No longer 67, but still 66. That's good. It's worth it. Worth it in my opinion. And then these are the reflection accuracies. So it shows here from left to right, like sort of reflection distance. It shows you from left to right, like as you increase this scale, just how big of an effect it's going to be. Like on the left hand side is with it all the way at the lowest, and then at the right hand side it's at 100. So you can choose sort of in between there which one you're happy with. You can see more of the screen space objects are being reflected on the right hand side, where on the left hand side it's doing a bit less, but of course it'll save you some performance potentially. Like we were at 66, now we're like at 64, 65-ish with this stuff at 100. I'd say 70% accuracy. I'd say 70% across the board. I'd probably be happy with. It's pretty good everywhere. Glossy reflections quality. This is a different reflection though. And so here you can see it again. On the right hand side you can see the wall and stuff. The corner of the wall. Just how good it looks. So how sharp, how high of resolution. Whether it looks like a fuzzy reflection or almost like a ray trace reflection, honestly, at 100%. So at 100, I'm pretty happy with it. We're 65, 64-ish, which I guess these didn't make much of a difference. But I'm not near a large body of water either. Maybe I'll have to retune those when I get there. Real-time reflections quality. So once again, same sort of thing here. That instead of just using screen space, it's going to like take into account how close those objects are to the water. And instead of using essentially a reflection capture, it's like using a planar reflection. But for a dynamic surface like the water. So here's off, low, medium, and then ultra. So off and low is the biggest difference. Absolutely, at least use low. Medium looks substantially better in my opinion, especially if you look at like the archway and stuff, the door on the left-hand side. High looks a bit sharper, a little more detail to it, and then ultra, pretty much looks like high. Like they're both noisy, but which one's more accurate, I couldn't tell you. I'll try ultra. We're 64, 65 at the moment. Still 64 and 65 because we're not near a body of water. I mean, there's still puddles and stuff on the floor, but I don't know how much of a difference that really makes at the moment. Real-time clouds, shadow reflection. You see like the shadows of the clouds having an effect on these shadows and stuff, or on these reflections. Screen space subsurface scattering. We're 64, 65 still. And then look at the hand, the neck near the collar, the skin near the hairlines and stuff, the ear, the opening of the ear, as well as around the eyes. Subsurface scattering is, of course, as the light enters through a translucent surface like skin, it actually sort of scatters through that surface and helps light its way through it. Like when you put your finger on a flashlight and you can see it lighting up your finger. So we're 64, 65 right now. 64. Apparently no longer 65. 64. Refraction quality. I would say multi-layered is pretty expensive. We're at half res right now. You can see the difference between them. At multi-layered, it takes into account other windows that are beyond the window you're primarily looking through. So if you're looking through two windows at a time, like we're looking through that distance window, the one right in front of us and the one at the far building, which is why you see that refraction happening through the second window as well, where like at half res and full res you don't. Half res, the objects through the window are going to look lower res, honestly. Full res they won't, but we still see some refraction from the window, which is nice. But multi-layered refraction is more expensive, so we'll see. This is half res, we're at 64 stable. Full res, we're 64, still pretty stable. Multi-layered, 59. That's a pretty substantial drop, and I feel like I may not notice it very much, but if I do find it to be like immersion breaking, I'll probably turn this one back on. I just don't think I'm going to notice it that much, and it's pretty expensive. So that's when I would say stay away from refraction quality, or at least multi-layered. I would avoid. Depth of field, in my opinion, it's off right now. I had it on off, so 64 stable. Let's see if at ultra it makes any difference. So cinematics and gameplay all the way at ultra. 64 stable, nothing. Motion blur quality, I actually turned mine off, but I guess I can set it to ultra, full restoration and multi. So this is the highest motion blur you can get, and I don't think it's gonna make any difference. No, it doesn't. I mean, I don't want it anyway, but yeah. If you like motion blur, turn it all the way up. So the resolution is good. The quality looks good. Let's look at bloom resolution. This is like using like a mild halation or like a bright spot anywhere that bloom would be occurring, where like here it's actually scattering that depending on like the different surfaces that are near them. So it's scattering or blooming a little more accurately. We had it at half res, 64 stable. Let's go to full res. 63 stable, but I think it looks quite a bit better than low res, honestly. In my opinion, it does, and it's worth the 1 FPS to me. Volumetric effects quality. If you look at the crepuscular rays or light shafts or god rays or whatever you like to call them, that's what this is going to be affecting more than anything. Volumetric effects lighting. So look at the sharpness of those crepuscular rays as they go through the window. There's a big difference between high and ultra, but I think ultra is actually pretty expensive. We're at 63 stable. Oof, 58. That's quite a lot. If we use high, 62. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with 62. I mean, it dips down to 61 occasionally, but from low to high, I think it's pretty visually different, and high looks pretty good. Ultra definitely does look better, especially if you look at the ones just to the right of Joel's head, but it's really expensive, so I'm gonna go with high. I mean, if you've got a 4090, crank it up, right? I don't, so I've got to be a little bit frugal here. Lens flare, I think I saw no difference in this. So 62 sometimes dipping to 61. Let's see, 62 still at full res. There it's off, so you see no lens flare. Low res or half res, it's still there, but you're going to see that it's going to be a little undefined or underdefined. And you can see it around like not the smallest radius, but the second radius. So like you see one big bubble, another medium-sized bubble within that, and then a smaller bubble within that. So if you look at the medium-sized one, you can see quite a bit of resolution difference between half res and full res. So I'm going to keep that full res. It seems to not really cost me too much. And that's where I'm going to keep it. Because I could go higher in resolution, but my frame rate's going to be kind of garbage. Or I could go a little bit lower and I could use FSR more. But again, I think this is the better balance, at least for this card. The settings and stuff I think are pretty useful to anybody with any card, but as far as this card goes, using what was I using? 1800 and then using FSR from 1200 to 1800, I think looks substantially better than going from 1080 to 4K. And I think it looks better than 1440. I think it looks better than scaling up to 1440 also. I think this is the best bang for buck. Display resolution and FSR setting. And usually I'm using VSync, but it's VSync at 120. So this really isn't limiting anything. Anyway, yeah, those are... These don't have any effect. I mean, field of view does, of course, by like 1 or 2 FPS, depending on if you go to like from min to max. But camera shake and motion blur don't really have any effect. Even chromatic aberration doesn't. Even film grain doesn't, because you can't turn it off. You're just setting it to a lower intensity or higher, but it's still on technically. But these are the settings I would recommend with an RX 6800 or even a 6800 XT maybe. I mean, they're close enough performance. And then maybe for a 6700 XT to drop from 1200 up to 1800 to whatever the next level is. 1064 up to 1800. I really wish this had like a percentage scale that we could actually change to like, as you know, by 1% at a time. I think that would be really useful. Anyway, this video is super, super long, but I figured I'd go through the settings, show those few test runs right at the beginning. And if you found this video useful or whatever, you can come back to it whenever you are like, which setting was it that was really expensive? Well, if I can go back and remember the ones that I didn't put at ultra, right? So anything at ultra I thought was not very expensive. Refraction quality, right? Multi-layered refraction. What else? This one I put on high. Ambient occlusion, denoise quality. There's no ultra for that. There was also the crepuscular rays, which are called, what are they called here? Volumetric Effects Quality. So that one was pretty expensive at ultra. Ambient occlusion, denoise quality, no. Context shadows quality, no. Spotlight shadow resolution. Probably not as much as the other ones. That's about it, I think. Dynamic objects level of detail. I don't see a big difference between high and ultra in terms of quality, so I'm not using ultra. Same thing here, a little bit in the hair, but if you're not using high res, it doesn't matter. And that's it. All of the other ones, there's not really a big difference between low and ultra, which is ridiculous, honestly. It's like 3 or 4 settings that really add up to the big performance difference between them. So go ahead and turn a few things to ultra and then turn down the few that I bothered to turn down if you agree with me. But yeah, you can come back to this video anytime and then see that those are the ones I cared about if you just go to the end of the video and then back it up by like a minute or so. Anyway, I really hope that they improve the optimization of this game a little bit, because like I said, pulling 150 watts is not great. And using 50% of a 5950X for this game, it's kind of ludicrous. 60% there. You 61, 60? Man, that's crazy. That's really absolutely ridiculous to me. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys have fun playing this game. I know I will.
Don't look, Sarah.
And I'll see you guys in the next one. Long-winded video. I know. My apologies. Bye.